there's that man again. Well, good evening.
Welcome. We're back to the 9th annual Texas Trailblazers Awards, and thank you for joining us to blaze a new trail for virtual events. I want to take this opportunity to thank those who pivoted with us as we transition to a virtual event today, without whom this event and the work of the Witty would not be possible. First, the Elizabeth Huth Coates Charitable Foundation, who has graciously been the presenting sponsor of the conference, which now includes the Texas Trailblazers Award, for 3 years. We so wish that we could thank you personally, Barry and Elizabeth Roberts and Amy Steeran, and of course all the trustees for your dedication to the arts and the humanities. Thank you. And for Texas Monthly for their continued support of the museum through this awards program, also through Witty Game Dinner and a lot of other initiatives we work on together. Our two brands really couldn't be better aligned. The Witty as a museum focused on Texas, and Texas Monthly, the National Museum of Texas. We look forward to hearing from Editor-in-Chief Dan Goodgame later in the program. Thank you to the Tex Elliott family as the scholarship sponsor and Valero as the speaker sponsor, and to all of the table buyers who have allowed us to transition your support to the operations of the Witty during these challenging times. Thank you so much. Today, we are honoring ever forward and amazing thinking Graham Weston for his vision and bold steps that have forever changed San Antonio, from rack space to the revitalization of downtown, which is happening all the time, and much more. I will let Witty Chair of Trustees Chair Dirk Elmendorf tell you more. You know, it's fitting that Dirk is introducing Graham as two of the co-founders of Rackspace, and as important, Dirk himself is a transformational leader of the Witty as chair. Dirk propels us forward with powerful language and constant innovation sorely needed in the pandemic era. Dirk leads a tenacious board of trustees, and we thank all of you for your guidance as we really navigate our way. The trustees, and Dirk in particular, has never wavered to focus on the Witty reopening and continuing to be a strong educational resource for this community and beyond. So thank you to Dirk. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Dirk Elmendorf and Graham Weston.
Thank you very much, Maurice. I wanted to welcome Graham Weston to the stage and talk about the Trailblazer Award itself, which is awarded to someone for demonstrating the pioneering spirit of Texas with a deep love of its land, people, and the Witty. And I think it's amazing that I get to be the one to present this to you and have kind of a more deeper conversation about all that you've done. You know, when we think about your past accomplishments, it's a big list, Graham. And for me, you know, the highlights start at Rackspace and kind of shifting the technical world and move into your focus on the downtown. And now you have even newer stuff going on. You know, when you look at all that you've done, I think one of the things that's important to inspire other trailblazers is, how do you pick your mission? How do you find the next mission you're going to tackle?
Well, I think the Rackspace story began with when you and I met at Chester's Hamburgers, I think that from that's such a great example of a time where the idea for Rackspace was not my idea. It was something that you and your partners brought to Morris and me. And I just feel like I could see an opportunity to be a catalyst in that opportunity. So I think that was my role. I could say, I think that I can help get this started, get this kicked off, and help get in the right direction. So I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things where my particular interests and skills can be a catalyst for things to happen.
I was going to say, and I mean, at this point, a lot of things must come at you. And so do you have a secret trick to filtering out the things you're like, oh, this isn't going to go anywhere, or I'm not the right person for this, or like, I mean, you must be awash in opportunity.
Well, I think that it's I don't have a secret to that, other than you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your princess.
Yeah.
I think that certainly there are a lot of great ideas in the world, and the question is, which ones are really the ones to stop your life and pursue? I think that's one of my favorite one of the things I'm proudest of about Rackspace is that once the five of us got together, we really stopped our lives and said, let's go do this, let's commit to it. And I think to start something or to create a change, you really do have to have that level of commitment. I think about it like a little bit like giving birth. When a woman is giving birth, they're fully committed, right? There's no distractions, there's no texting. And I think starting a business or changing anything requires that level of commitment.
And to go from Rackspace to focused on downtown and really making it a coherent idea, like what was it about downtown that captured your imagination?
Well, I think San Antonio has so much potential. Texas have the wind at our back. I mean, look at the amount of the companies like Tesla that's just moved a large manufacturing plant here. I'm talking to people every day from other states who see Texas in their future where they didn't in the past. And that's just such an advantage for us. But also San Antonio is a unique city within Texas. Really gives people a choice. And San Antonio is so different from Austin, so different from Houston. But I really feel that after many years of trying to recruit people to San Antonio, Rackspace was growing at 100 people a month for 7 or 8 years. Every single month we hired 100 people. And we hired about half of them from San Antonio. We hired everyone we possibly could from San Antonio. But we had to also hire from outside to bring the skills into the city that we needed. And we heard over and over about how young people could not find an identity to be in San Antonio. They couldn't find a neighborhood, they couldn't find the cafes, they couldn't find the coffee shops. And I think after years and years of realizing that San Antonio didn't really cater well to young people, and I think one day I realized that my kids may not even consider San Antonio in their future. And so I would say that after years of that, I started to feel that I could play a role in making an urban community and a general, startup community that would be attractive to young people. The other element of it was that our Mayor Castro, I was working with him on a project at the time, and so I was really sort of already thinking about, what sort of city do we need to build together, and I think that was. My time with our mayor was a very catalytic time for me. I think it's really what put me on the path.
So part of being a trailblazer is going where people haven't gone before. And a lot of times when you go to something that's too new, you don't get love and support, you get criticism and haters. What is your secret for persevering that? I mean, I've been in the room when you've said things that people are like, that's crazy, we're not gonna do that. And later on, we totally did those things. And you were right. What keeps you on the path when everybody around you says, no, we shouldn't do it that way?
That's a great question. I just think some ideas really strike me, and I can't let go of them. And I feel that there are a lot of great ideas that that when I'm able to find the one or two collaborators at the beginning of a project that we can be fully aligned with, that just really energizes me. And you were one of those people at the beginning of Rackspace, and to find that foundation of alignment is really critical for me. So I think that the other thing is that I see it as when an idea is brand new, I'm really looking for people who do see potential in it. There are plenty of people who don't, and that's fine. By the way, I have plenty of terrible ideas as well. So, but I think that when I sort of start to see things as, I'm not looking to sell people on it. I'm looking to find people who understand it and want to support it. And so that, I feel, takes the pressure off of me to try to persuade people about it. And I think we've had plenty of victories together and plenty of failures as well. So it's, and I think there's also in the world of ideas, there are plenty of ideas that don't launch. And so the ones that really are magic are the ones that I'm constantly on the look for.
Well, so when you look out at the tech landscape, the model is very obsessed with this single identity for a company. The Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, the super smart, maybe not a nice person face of a company. And not only was not Rackspace that way, but none of the things you've done have been that way. They've never become the cult of personality of Graham. How have you preserved this focus on building a team? Even now, you said, I build a team on people who want to do this thing.
Yeah.
How have you preserved that in the face of an opportunity to be the terrible dictator?
Well, we can ask our fellow partners whether that's true in reality. But I think that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a team. And I think that I always am looking for that core team of allies and supporters is so important to me that the idea of doing these things alone is not really even in the cards. I also think that when you find people who are aligned with you, there's something magic that happens. And I feel like that moment separates your past from your future. Finding those people truly allows a whole new future to unfold at a level that would never happen alone. At Rackspace, we had it is true that I would say the press is looking for a star to paint a story around. And it's good storytelling, but we had a policy of a no stars policy at Rackspace where we really resisted having any one of us be featured as the brains behind the operation. And I know this frustrated our communications people because it made it harder to tell stories. But I think that really any great success story works that way. There is no star. Very seldom is there a star. And ultimately, you can't accomplish much alone.
Well, so that kind of leads my right into the next thing, which is, okay, we talked about things that you have done and are doing. Like, what's next? Where do you go? What is the next, trail you blaze?
Well, I think my personal mission statement at this phase in my life is to help make San Antonio a place that my kids could move home to. And there are a lot of aspects of that, a lot of things that need to happen. San Antonio has so much potential. How do we fulfill that potential? And one of certainly I'm interested in creating a great walkable downtown. And it seems kind of not very relevant right now. I remember there's a time where
I was going to say, right before we got on stage, we had masks on. We just took them off for this moment. And
yes,
so.
Absolutely. We're super compliant, aren't we? Yes. Right before, during COVID, my partners and I launched a project that I'm really proud of, which is a park. We opened a park downtown San Antonio, right across the street from the new Frost Bank Tower. We hired a world famous architect who's also doing the new redesign of the Eiffel Tower. And we really put our hearts into building this park. It's also going to have an awesome barbecue place. The Pinkertons barbecue is going to be there on the northern end of it. So creating an urban place like that, a park, a green space, I'm really excited about that opening, and I can't wait for the day that we have it crowded full of people throwing frisbees and having fun there. That just seems so out of place right now, though. It's just that. But I would say that was my mid-COVID excitement. Since I think the other thing I'm really excited about is UT San Antonio is 35,000 students today, and it is slated to grow to 50,000 plus. And if there's any kind of science that I believe in, it's demographics. The kids who are going to be going to college in 18 years have already been born. So we know that UT San Antonio is going to be an increasingly powerful and important institution in our city. So the fact that UTSA is building a major campus downtown, right in the urban core, I think is going to be transformational. It's going to have the architecture school. It's also going to have the business school in the long term. But probably the thing that's most exciting to me is the launch of the College of Data Science. Data science is not computer science. It's computer science plus big data, plus artificial intelligence, plus machine learning, plus mathematics, plus statistics. We need all these disciplines in order to create a self-driving car.
I was going to say, you're talking about all the disciplines that, used to be, hey, you need programming and this computer science stuff, and now to get to the next level, you have to go to all these next level ideas.
I think that computer science, this area of data science, is such an opportunity for UT San Antonio and for every young South Texan who wants to be part of the future. If you want to be part of helping launch rockets into space or self-driving cars or all the 1,000 different ways that machine learning and artificial intelligence will be applied in the coming decades, the UT San Antonio's data science program is going to be one of the best in the country. Also, I bet it's going to be the biggest in the country as well. And these are going to be young people going into amazing jobs of the future. So I think that as well as the collaboration with for-profit companies that have clamored to be part of it, I think that's going to be transformational. I'm very excited about it.
Is there anything you haven't gotten to that you wanted to?
Plenty. I think one of the things that's been occupying a lot of my thoughts lately is the governor kindly asked me to be part of his COVID strike force. And so since I actually got COVID,
okay,
and I got COVID from my son, who is asymptomatic. So I would say this idea of the virus spreading through people who don't know it, this has really been on my mind.
Yeah.
And as we'd say in Texas, it got me to thinking, because if we can't identify people who are asymptomatic in our population, they become silent spreaders. And they are continuing the virus. I think this is one of the most important distinctions between the flu, which is a terrible thing to get, and COVID. I think the fact that when you get the flu, we immediately go to bed because we feel terrible. That means we stop spreading it. But when we get COVID, 50% of the people who are spreading it don't know they have it at that time. This is a really important difference that I think is going to make COVID, it's always going to be in danger of spreading exponentially. If your business has 2 people with COVID, it could become 16 in a matter of days. So this has been something that I've been really focused on. And I believe that part of the equation is to add assurance testing to our arsenal of strategies to keep to make the virus diminish. Assurance testing is where you are testing people who think they're well, they're not people who think they're sick.
You finally get to know, you kind of go, okay,
That's
I
right.
think I'm fine, and the test says I'm fine.
My son recently went to visit his grandmother. Of course, I wanted him to get tested before he met with her. An assurance test is where you're testing someone to say, are you infected, right? It's really like searching for a needle in a haystack, but that needle is a match.
Right.
Right? If you can find a person in 100 who actually has COVID, who doesn't know it, I feel like you found that match that could ignite the whole rest of the population around them.
And so this is kind of your next area to look into.
Well, we have some, we've been running a pilot of doing asymptomatic testing, that is assurance testing. We've been running this pilot at Geekdom the last 3 weeks, and we've actually identified 5 people who silently had COVID, who otherwise would have been infecting their fellow members. So we're running a pilot right now, but we're going to have some big announcements in the weeks ahead, because I think there's a need for our society to have pandemic infrastructure so we're more prepared next time. Now, we haven't made COVID go away yet, but think about in the decades ahead, we need to be better prepared than we were this time. If you think about, we are prepared for war in the Pacific. We have a military base in Okinawa. We have a military base in South Korea. We have a base in Japan. We're prepared for war in the Pacific, but we were not prepared for this pandemic. And I think that we're going to find that in 5 or 10 years, we're going to have a secretary of pandemic response that will help us be better prepared next time around. So we're going to need pandemic infrastructure to be prepared, standing at the ready. And I think that assurance testing, being able to have assurance testing, that is the ability to test people who don't have symptoms, and to be able also be able to identify people who do have symptoms, that is being able to do that testing, I think is going to become standard equipment for our society going forward.
You know, I have to say, it was a joy to build internet infrastructure with you back in the day, and it makes me really excited to know that you're building COVID infrastructure now, because just like internet infrastructure was important to what we were doing then, COVID infrastructure is important for where we're going. And I'll have to say, like, we're about to come to the end of our time, and I just wanted to say, you know, thank you very much from Texas, the state, and the city of San Antonio, and the Museum of the Witty, but most especially me personally. I mean, you had a dramatic catalytic effect on my life, and it is with great honor that I present this award to you here at the Witty.
Thank you, Dirk. We did business together for years and years and years, and we're great friends, and it's been, our relationship has been a highlight of my life. So I'm honored to receive it from you. And thank you to the Witty Museum for this award. It really is, it's very special. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maurice McDermott. I'm president and CEO of the Witty Museum. It gives me great pleasure to introduce a powerful friend of the Witty, a partner of the Witty, and that is Dan Goodgame, editor-in-chief at Texas Monthly. Texas Monthly has a 9-year partnership with the Witty on the Trailblazers Awards, but more than that, Texas Monthly has been an extraordinary partner in celebrating the history and culture of Texas through our museum, and of course, what an astonishing magazine and outreach that Texas Monthly has. Dan Goodgame is from San Antonio, so he's a special editor-in-chief for us here in San Antonio. But please do know that he worked for Rackspace for 9 years, and as a journalist has interviewed some of the most august leaders in the United States over time. So again, so pleased and honored to have Dan Goodgame here with us today.
Thank you, Maurice. During World War II, General George Marshall needed an officer to lead a difficult and dangerous mission. He summoned an aide and said, "I need a West Point football player." Friends, the Texas version of that line is, "I need Tom Luce." These words have been spoken by CEOs who needed Tom's legal help with huge mergers and acquisitions, and they've been spoken by Texas governors and one Texan in the White House when they needed help with education reform, a dangerous mission indeed, and one dear to Tom. Reared by a single mother who had no college education, Tom was blessed to attend the excellent public schools in Highland Park in the Dallas area. He took full advantage of that opportunity and won scholarships to SMU and its law school. He founded the Hughes and Luce law firm and became one of the country's most sought-after corporate attorneys. He was appointed Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court, Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education, and Chief of Staff for the 1984 Texas Select Committee on Public Education. You all may recall that last effort led to important limits on class sizes, expansion of pre-kindergarten, and the no pass, no play rule for student athletes. Through his public service and his work with nonprofits, Tom has sought to give all Texans the kind of opportunities that he enjoyed. Before the plague hit, I had the pleasure of moderating a public discussion with Tom in Houston regarding Texas 2036. That's the ambitious effort that he's launched to make sure that our state remains the best place to live and work amid rapid population growth and troubled public schools. At one point, Tom observed that he worried that, quote, "all the Californians who want to work have already moved here," unquote. And it was a good line, but I suspect that with Tom's leadership, we'll be attracting new Texans for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Tom Luce.
Thanks for that kind introduction. And I cannot tell you how disappointed I am to not be physically present. I've always admired the mission of the museum, and I would say the mission of the museum in terms of the transformative experience in nature, science, and culture could not be more important than it is in this COVID world we live in. And that's really a little bit about what I want to talk about today. But first, I want to talk about Graham Weston. And I think it's so appropriate that you are honoring Graham as a trailblazer. I've gotten to know Graham fairly well the last year. I've had the opportunity to work with him as a member of the governor's strike force on reopening Texas, and he's on the board of Texas 2036, which I chair. And I have such admiration for him. And I would say his mission in life of promoting well-being for the entire community, as he would say, tomorrow, and he's an impatient entrepreneur. I think it's a wonderful mission for us all to think about in this post-COVID world someday we live in, because I believe strongly that Graham's view of how you help people and how you must strive to improve the world at all times is a real lesson for us all. I admire what he's done in San Antonio, not only from his business success story, the fact he took a company from about 15 employees to 1,200 employees is what we need in Texas. We need his entrepreneurial spirit. I think his drive to improve San Antonio at all times is just a wonderful example for us all that we really need to think about. And the last word about Graham, which I think is important to where we are today, is that Graham always talks about how does a company or how does an enterprise differentiate itself. And in Texas, I really think about how we want our state to be in 2036. And that's what led to the creation of Texas 2036, is to help all of us focus on what do we want our state to be like in its bicentennial in 2036. And my goodness, it seems awfully difficult to think about the future today, given everything we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But it makes it even more important, because from my perspective, COVID has been like the perfect storm 2020. It's a combination of factors. Yes, it's the virus, but it's what the virus reveals starkly to us. The virus did not create the problems we have in our health system, our education system, our government performance, our lack of digital infrastructure. It didn't create the digital divide, but it revealed the landscape. It's like a flood. It's like Hurricane Harvey, and it struck us hard. And now maybe, although at times we can't tell that for sure, but someday the water's going to recede. And when it does, we have to think about rebuilding. We have to think about resilience. We need to think about rebuilding our state. And our state has suffered a lot of damage over this year. The numbers of unemployment are striking. The unemployment and economic damage has been disproportionate in terms of its equity and fairness. It's hit lower income people harder. Somebody told me the other day they were having cabin fever, and I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, I'm getting tired of sitting on my porch working on the computer." Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that didn't have that option. They were having to go to work every day. We call them essential workers, and they were essential. But they were the ones on the front line, and it included not just our healthcare workers, but those that kept the city running, whether it was in terms of city services, whether it was the grocery store, whether it was the pharmacy, all sorts of people united together to help all of us. And from my perspective, that's the issue going forward, is how will we begin to think about our future, and will we really focus on the common good, is what I call it. We are a society that has, particularly Texans, we talk about a lot about our freedom and our liberty, but I'm a student of history, and the way I read history, with rights comes responsibilities. And what are our responsibilities to our neighbors? And to me, the striking thing about the pandemic, I would hope that it has starkly revealed that the health of your neighbor is equally important as your health. the health of our community is equally important to your personal health. I don't care whether you can afford a concierge doctor or you live behind a gated community. If we're not focused on the common good, our society is not going to work the way it should. And that's why I think it's important to honor trailblazers. And I would say, like Graham, but we've had trailblazers like Speaker Strauss, who's been and was a great Speaker of the House. He's continuing to focus on how to improve our state, which it's mighty important that he not leave the stage because he's a major player in our state. But we can't just rely upon the Graham Westons and the Joe Strausses of the world. It's time for all of us to get involved in the future of our state. And what I see, I spent about 2 years traveling the state to decide about forming Texas 2036. And what I saw that was a little disappointing to me was how frequently we as individuals just decided that we're going to tune out, so to speak, of what's happening in the public sector. And that doesn't really work in our society. I've talked to a lot of audiences, and particularly I see in the philanthropy world, people are focused on, well, I want to make sure that I can help X number of people in my community, let's say with scholarships. Well, that's what I call transactional philanthropy. And it's terribly important. It's terribly important in my life. I got scholarships to go to college from businessmen who raised the money to help me get my start. I had mentors throughout my life. I was raised by a single parent mother, and there were always surrogate fathers who appeared in my life, big brothers, if you will. And that's important, and it transformed my life. But we're a state of 28 million people, soon to maybe become 40 million people. And so we've got to do more than just transform Tom Luce's life. We have to transform the life of an enormous amount of Texans who are not today able to have the same opportunities that Tom Luce had. And that requires a factor that many people have written off, which is the public sector. And I say that real change in the magnitude we want really occurs when top-down efforts, by that I mean state action, meet in the middle in harmony with local efforts. What, for instance, Graham is doing to try to rebuild the entrepreneurship environment in San Antonio is critical. But if state policy pulls in the opposite direction from what Graham Weston and others want to accomplish, it becomes harder, it becomes slower. And in our state, we face an enormous amount of challenges over the next 20 years. How do we handle that growth? On the other hand, if we don't grow, the pie will not grow. The pie needs to grow. It needs to be more equitably distributed. We need to realize that this state will not work unless it's working for many more people than it is today. We have too many students that are finishing high school not prepared for post-high school work. And that's a necessity in today's world. No, I hear the argument every now and then that, not everybody needs to get a college degree, well, a 4-year college degree, and that's certainly fine. But let me tell you, in tomorrow's world, everybody has to complete at least 14 years of education. They've got to get a community college degree, or they have to get a nationally recognized technical certificate to be able to make more than a minimum wage in tomorrow's economy. And if that doesn't happen in our state's not going to work economically. And we're not going to be a competitor for talent from all over the world. The facts are that our state has grown over the last 20 years by attracting people from all over the world. And yes, I mean all over the world, from every part of the world, not just Central America or Mexico or Latin America. We've attracted talent from Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, the Philippines. We've attracted people from all over the world. And that's what has allowed us to grow and prosper. But that immigration is slowing down, and it's slowing down because we don't talk enough about the contribution of immigration to our society. And that's compounded when we're not educating people who were born and raised here and are being educated in our Texas public schools. The facts are that the people who have immigrated to our state, on average, have had more education lately than our Texas public school students. That's not sustainable, and it won't work unless we improve education for all. And that's going to require some rigor. It's going to require some discipline from our public officials to really fund public education as they promised to do in the last session. But it's also going to require an increase in public involvement and public support of public education. And then we have to tackle our healthcare system. Our healthcare system is, it's not working the right way. It's too expensive. The outcome is not sufficient. We have too many people who do not have access to the healthcare they need when they need it and where they need it. And if you don't have a healthy population, you're not going to have a healthy workforce. And we find and we believe at Texas 2036 that you can't separate issues one at a time and deal with them. It's going to take a holistic approach. A better educated child is a healthier child. A healthier child is a better educated child. And you can't necessarily have a healthy person unless you have transportation and access to health care. And you can't necessarily afford health care unless you have a living wage job. So it's all connected. And that's the reason that we believe strongly that all of our citizens, every one of you at this luncheon, has to commit to better engage in a public discussion of what we want our state to be. How do we want to differentiate ourselves from the other 49 states, from the rest of the world? What is our differentiation? What is Texas really about in the next century? You know, we know the stories of Texas, we know the myths of Texas, we know the truths about Texas. And I'd rather be in Texas than any other place in the country to face the challenges that we face post-pandemic. But let's don't kid ourselves. We face a lot of challenges. We'll have budget challenges in the next session. Philanthropy stretched. We have food insecurity. We have a lot of challenges to face in our state. And again, I'd rather be no place to face them than Texas, but I know this, we're going to have to step up, and we're going to have to step up our game significantly to be able to have the state we want 20 years from now. So my challenge to each of you is to think about what you want San Antonio to be like. You know, we need to think about trailblazers. We all need to be trailblazers, just not Graham Weston, just not Joe Strauss. It's going to be up to all of us to put our shoulder to the wheel. And I hope that we'll do that. And I hope you'll think about joining our effort at Texas 2036. We're linked up with local communities all over the state. I'd love for you to go to our website, texas2036.org, explore what we know about the state, where we think the state's headed. And most importantly, think about what you want your community to be like, what you want your state to be like. Right now, I'm concerned about the lack of discussion of, as I started my remarks, by talking about what is the common good. Because if our society doesn't work for more of us, then it's not going to work for any of us. And that requires some sacrifice by all of us, and it requires some work by all of us. And it requires us to really enter into the arena, as I like to say. And the arena looks messy in today's world. We live in a social media world where we listen to echo chambers. We don't listen to each other. That's another part of the perfect storm of 2020 that I call it. But we've got to overcome that. And as Texans, we can and we will. And efforts like the museum to engage people in curiosity and exploring the world, understanding science is real. We need to deal with the real world in which we live, whether it be our environment, our landscape. How do we preserve it? What do we do about the future needs of water? All of this is relevant to our future. And therefore, I really applaud the mission of the museum. I applaud you for recognizing the contributions of somebody like Graham Weston. And I'm a little hesitant to close knowing that Joe Strauss comes behind me and he'll probably correct a lot of what I've said. But again, thank you for the honor of speaking to you today, and thank you for recognizing my friend Graham Weston. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom Luce. We are looking to you and to Texas 2036 as we move into the future, and for your sure-footed leadership to move us forward with reflection. We really appreciate you. And I especially want to thank and congratulate Graham Weston. Graham, we are watching you, we're listening to you, we're paying attention to where you go. You inspire us to look at the future with confidence.